continuing with the reading of Part 5, The Approach Theory. Trying to document a pattern of signals. To sum up the pieces in this puzzle, I have to start from the very beginning, trying to identify the very beginning of what could be an approach by advanced life forms. The interesting part is not only the isolated signals in themselves, which I refer to as incidents, but also that the signals seem to increase in strength over time, thereby suggesting that a physical approach between our two life forms has started, presumably triggered by a zero-risk signal they have received from Earth. Whom is doing the moving part is still an open question. But the natural thing to assume is that they are moving towards us based on the zero-risk rationale. Hence, for now I suggest that they are approaching us and that they won't stop until they are here. Since, based on the zero-risk argument, they should not stop until they have 100% control over Earth, securing the nature of the machine's paradise state discussed in Part 3. The zero-risk argument will probably influence the approach speed, as the question of speed will become secondary to the question of risk. Further, if the product in the machine, the paradise state, is eternal, time should not be extremely crucial. However, the theory assumes that they will move as fast as possible, but just that the question of speed becomes secondary to the question of risk. It is also important to remember that if the Paradise machine model is correct, their closest distance should be about 1,560 light-years or longer, based on the distance to the closest black hole from Earth. On that note, to be able to identify noticeable movements by an increase in signal strength in just 20 years suggests that they are moving incredibly fast, at least relative to our standards. The timeline starts in 2005 and 2006 with the so-called Women of Paradise story. The idea is that it was in 2005 a zero-risk signal was transmitted and should, according to the theory, be what started their approach, Figure 19. In the first section of Part 5, I also suggest that this article series in itself could be an important part of their approach. However, the focus now is to set lights on their so-called signals in which I can document. This should be more interesting to the reader since the reader can now judge the relevance of the suggested signals. The first incident. The first incident, referred to as a Women of Paradise incident, detailed in the mini short story A Women of Paradise, marks what could be the first few signals in the Femi-life forms approach. There were actual two incidents relating to the Women of Paradise experience, taking place 6 months apart. The very first minor incident, lasting just a second or so, is the so-called whispering episode. This episode, in the summer of 2005, took place about 6 months prior to the main event in January 2006, when I first discovered fourth law, the formula EU equals 0 equals paradise. This was the main event when it all came crashing down, with meeting the so-called Paradise women taking place not long after the discovery of the EU equals 0 equals paradise formula. This time around, I spent time with them in their paradise for about 15 to 20 minutes. In the beginning, the formula itself was paramount, and the encounters with the Paradise women were not deemed highly significant. This experience was extraordinary, but I presumed later it was merely a side effect of the exhaustion that culminated the dozens of intensive hours before the formula was written down on paper. Reference: The Women of Paradise story. It's expected that the human brain might hallucinate after approximately 48 hours of hard work without food or sleep. So I was pretty sure it was a side effect, even though it felt real. But I have never been in this condition before, so I did not know exactly what to expect after staying awake for so long. It could of course still have been a side effect of being without food and sleep, but this time around I put the experience into the context of presenting the approach theory. Since I always waved it of as being a side effect of the circumstances during the discovery of the EU equals 0 equals paradise formula, it took many years before I wrote the experience down in a short story. However, the hallucination rationale did not account for the whispering experience in 2005, which also involved one of the paradise women. I don't feel crazy, maybe a bit eccentric at times, but I have never before heard voices in my head in this manner. The episode therefore stood out as something I clearly remember, even though it lasted for just a second or two. It must have been the only time I can recall hearing a voice in my head. It might sound like a frightening experience, but it wasn't. It didn't bother me at all. It was actually a pleasant feeling, as if she was a friend of mine. I never told anyone about it. To be honest, it felt so good and natural that I probably didn't bother to tell anyone. It was just a thing that happened and everything continued as normal after. However, this unique episode in 2005 has now become intriguing in light of the approach theory. The thing that is a bit crazy is that I felt that this same woman came back to me in sort of a dream about 6 months later. Just that now she approached me with several other women after the discovery of the paradise formula. Now 20 years later, instead of waving these imaginary encounters with the paradise women as fantasies, etc., I now try to put them in a new perspective. In the perspective of the approach theory. For example, could the odd whispering episode from 2005 by one of the paradise women have been the very first weak signals from the advanced life forms Enrico Fermi discussed, which should be the same type of potential advanced life forms fourth law has predicted, being life forms starting to evolve billion of years before life on Earth? And was this initial short whispering episode followed approximately 6 months later by a tour in their paradise, being a whole village filled with these women and their babies? It was the women baby idea presented earlier in the article that triggered the approach theory, as the paradise women in that village did exactly what the women baby idea predicts. In this fantasy, they told me in so many words that the center of it all was to cultivate the loving bond between the women and the small children in their paradise. This connection with the women baby idea is the only reason to why I dare to go so far as to launch the approach theory in this article series. Hopefully any readers or listeners will understand this reasoning for launching the approach theory. It is of course still a wild assumption, but I think it's worthwhile to put this theory out there. Furthermore, this discovery will be the last in the article series. It really feels natural and correct to stop here. It's either all nonsense from start to end, or the whole thing is true. If it's all true, the article series has come full circle and there should be nothing more to add. On the other hand, if it is all nonsense, it's also a good time to stop. In conclusion, either way, it is a good time to stop the research with this article. Now, back to the approach theory. Two intriguing aspects related to the 2006 episode of the Paradise Women include: 1. The emphasis in their paradise was on reinforcing the loving connection between women and babies. This love-producing process was the focus in their paradise all the time I was there. And I must add, it was extremely pleasant to be there, not boring at all. All they said was, "This is how we produce love here. We are optimizing the bond between women and child." But they never mentioned the women-baby idea, which idea emerged recently while writing this article a few months ago. This reinforces the concept of the women-baby idea, explained at the end of Part 3, and thereby supports the argument for femi-life forms to adopt a female form in the future as a natural part of fourth law and the Paradise Machine's design. This behavior in their women's paradise should therefore also indirectly confirm the zero-risk argument, since the reasoning for strengthening the bond between women and children was to secure nature's ego from being dominated, as these women would probably never challenge nature's ego via executing zero-risk strategies. Since to a woman a zero-risk situation might remind her of encountering a small child or baby. This is in accordance with the women-baby idea and the rationale for suggesting that the advanced femi-life forms should be on the female form, figure 13. The tunnels mentioned in the Paradise Women story initially seemed insignificant, but this has now changed. Notably, the timing of the onset of the extremely pleasant paradise sensation, a feeling of absolute safety, is intriguing. This sensation did not arise within the tunnels, but emerged as soon as the landscape of their paradise unfolded, just after the tunnels. However, I have no recollection of anything taking place inside of the tunnels. It took about 4 to 5 seconds if I were to guess. When looking back, it could be that my brain suppressed the gruesome production process in the tunnels as suggested in the Paradise Machine model in Part 3. As to me, the tunnel part of the experience felt like a dull moment. I can't remember anything of notice from it. The suggestion then is that any frightening experience from the tunnels must have been suppressed, as the Paradise model suggests, since the source behind the extreme pleasant feeling of safety and joy should, according to the model, stem from optimized billing psychology effects discussed in Part 3. Hopefully this is not so, and if it is, it should be a principle of justice behind the process, thereby automatically sparing all innocents like children. Based on the zero-risk argument, the impression is that the baby itself is the most protected entity in the machine, which fits with the zero-risk rationale described in Part 2. This is sort of confirmed in the Paradise Women story, even though they never said anything about it. If a psychological effect akin to advanced bullying methods is employed in the tunnel part of the machine to create a sense of safety at the end, in pure relief of escaping, I assume that the brain would completely suppress whatever triggered the pleasant sensation in the first place, a strong sense of fear, since remembering this part of the machine would probably destroy the peaceful and pleasant sensation in the paradise state, which should kick in after the tunnels. This production process is likely fully optimized and streamlined in the Paradise Machine, possibly crafted by highly advanced life forms with peak intelligence. Moreover, the process may occur so swiftly that one doesn't even register it happening, akin to the flick of a light switch. I don't know, but it is interesting that this design in the machine is also supported in the Women of Paradise story from 2006. Once again, I encourage the listener to decide for themselves the relevance of this speculation. I do not wish to alarm anyone on this subject. If the Paradise Machine model is genuine, it would be the most positive development for life on Earth. Alternatively, it could imply that there is an intention to intimidate us by proposing this production method, perhaps as a means of control. In theory, the machine would aim to maximize the number of individuals in the state of paradise, and thereby maximizing its production as any other machine would. Moreover, the various moral scenarios were explored in depth in Part 3. Was the Paradise experience a copying process? In the aftermath, almost 20 years later, as the episode with the Paradise women gained relevance in this article, I noticed something peculiar. The memories from the Paradise women experience felt as though I was physically present and not merely recalled as a dreamlike scenario. There is a difference in recalling fantasies and dreams from real experiences. It has therefore struck me that the Paradise episode seemed to have been memorized as if it was a real experience and not a dream. Remembering detailed moments, such as exactly how I turned a corner before we entered the house, etc. Exactly where I stood in the house and how it looked inside. And I particularly clearly remember the first time I saw a group of women sitting with their children in front of a lake, not far from the house. I stood there and watched them for a while. It was an amazing experience, and I remember it well. I also remember fragments of different thoughts that popped up in my mind while I was there. There are multiple of such details from the visit. I still remember. I believe I have never had such detailed memories from dreams and fantasies before. To be honest, I can't seem to remember many of dreams and fantasies at all. Now to the reason to why I mention this. The third article from 2021 proposes that the Paradise state is constructed from massless waves in a mathematical format. See also YouTube video in Figure 16. This theory was based on combining fourth law with Einstein's universal mass energy law in an attempt to draw new information out of the EU equals 0 equals Paradise expression. Based on this result, the third article continued to discuss a potential copying process enabling moving things from our mass energy part of the universe to the mathematical wave format in the Paradise state. By integrating Einstein's mass energy formula, E equals mc squared, with EU equals 0 equals Paradise, suggests that the predicted Paradise state might exist in a wave format. Moreover, invoking Joseph Fourier's work, this wave format could therefore theoretically reconstruct or copy any shape or form in our world over to the mathematical format, which is based on waves. Thus, if the advanced life forms fourth law and Fermi referred to do exist, it would not be a significant challenge for them to achieve this replication process. Even we are able to construct shapes and even 3D objects based on waves by applying the mathematical work of Joseph Fourier. Hence, a peak intelligence life form in the universe should be able to copy even humans and place them into the mathematical format the third article suggests exist in the Paradise state. Now, back to how this relates to the approach theory. If this copying operation is what took place during the Paradise Women experience in 2006, then the experience was not a fantasy, but real, albeit in a different format, the mathematical format mentioned in the third article. This of course implies that the copying process can be reversed. If not, I would have stayed behind in the Paradise state, not being able to tell the story back here on Earth. The suggestion that femi-life forms might physically encounter us in the approach theory is also based on this copying feature. It is proposed that they might have the capability to exist in both states of the Paradise machine by duplicating and transferring themselves between the two states, between our mass state and their wave state. This was sort of the interesting outcome of integrating Einstein's mass-energy formula with fourth law. As the two formulas are related, both formulas describing energy relationships in the universe, and it was interesting trying to integrate the two. However, this has been sort of a side project which is better presented in the YouTube video from Figure 16. The third article just mentioned that an Einstein-derived version of EU equals 0 equals Paradise could perhaps be written as EU equals 0 equals c squared, thereby replacing the word Paradise with the speed of light squared, implying that the Paradise state might be a place full of waves, since light is on the wave form. The approach theory suggests that femi-life forms could assume physical shapes, possibly even human-like, and visit Earth in spaceships. This theory is grounded in the rationale just described, providing a theoretical basis for the scenario. Even though I admit it is a wild idea. As a last note, it is also possible that they do not intend to meet us physically, but instead pulling us towards themselves, as depicted in Figure 28. Nevertheless, the fundamental principle of approach theory still stands, that we are approaching each other, and that a convergence eventually is inevitable. Whether it occurs within our realm of mass energy or in their domain of massless mathematical wave constructs. In conclusion, the data from the Paradise Women's experience in 2006 could theoretically originate from the other side of the Paradise machine, as it supports much of the suggested design in the Paradise machine model. It also supports the women baby idea and thereby the zero risk argument. The way the episode has been memorized indicates that the experience was not based on a fantasy or a dream. This could indicate that the experience was real, albeit being experienced on another format, thereby supporting a scenario in which the femi-life form can approach Earth in spaceships, at least just before the physical meeting takes place. The second incident. In 2015, John Nash basically passed away on my 40th birthday a few hours before midnight on May 24th, around 22:30 on May 23rd Oslo time. Moreover, Nash had just returned home from a trip to Oslo, Norway, on May 23rd, when he tragically died in a car accident on his way home from Newark Airport. This so-called second incident becomes important when launching the approach theory. As I must grab all the useful signaling data I can get while trying to build a timeline to support the approach theory. Again, whenever I engage in speculation, I encourage the reader to consider the relevance of these arguments. Some are even may be able to calculate the probability. The significance of this incident also lies in its documentation value through news reports, as nobody can fake this. In 2015, as I awoke on my 40th birthday, May 24th, the first thing I did was to check the news, as I always do. However, on this special day, the morning of my 40th birthday, the headline in the news was "John Nash died last night," on the very top of the news timeline. Those familiar with the article series on fourth law understand his significance to the theory would understand how special this morning was. Nash equilibrium's interpretation into fourth law prompted the creation of the first article in 2010, which resulted in this article series. The proposition that Nash equilibrium described the EU equals 0 equals paradise formula mathematically elevated the concept to a new level, and I was pretty excited about it. It was the integration with Nash equilibrium that made me write the first article on fourth law and thereby started this article series. In 2014, I discovered that the person referred to as the world's greatest expert on Nash equilibrium, Tom Siegfried, confirmed my approach to Nash equilibrium in his book A Beautiful Math, discussed more at adbiotech.com. As Siegfried in his book also flirts with the idea that Nash equilibrium actually describes the seeking of the most stable state in a system, hence flirting with thermodynamics. As I saw it, he had actually interpreted Nash's work in the same way as I had in the first article, just that I saw Nash equilibrium as part of a universal law. Agreeing in principle that Nash equilibrium described the seeking of the most stable state in a system, the only difference was that the system I referred to was the universe itself, suggesting that Nash had described a universal law mathematically, being the fourth law. However, I have no idea what Mr. Siegfried might think of this interpretation of Nash equilibrium, but to me it was special. It was special to read that an expert on the field had the same approach in how to interpret Nash. Hence, this just increased my fascination for Nash, his work, and to the fourth law. Therefore, in May 2015, my interest for Nash and his work had reached a peak, along with my belief in the theory of a fourth law. I guess it was about this time I decided to write down the Paradise Women story for the same reason. In aftermath, it must be pretty safe to say that Nash dying on my 40th birthday at random is extremely slim. Not impossible, of course, but it is a very strange incident. In addition, he departed from Oslo in Norway the day before he died, meaning that, depending on the route he took to the airport from his hotel, he bypassed my place of birth either by 10 or 100 meters the day before on 23rd of May. Could this strange episode on my 40th birthday be one part of a longer chain of signals which now had increased slightly in strength compared to the initial weak whispering signal in 2005? I'm not claiming anything, I just think it is a strange thing to happen, in particularly since Nash equilibrium is so central to fourth law. You could say, but why didn't he die on the 24th? If it was such an important deal? I don't know, but as I am born just over midnight the 24th of May, Nash died only 2 or 3 hours from the hour I was born 40 years ago. And if he had died later, the news of his tragic death might not have coincided with my morning news routine. Maybe the important thing was to surprise me as I woke up on my 40th birthday? Or just that they didn't want it to scare me too much, by not making the incident too brutal. But if the sources from the media is true, his death missed 24th of May by 1.5 hours. But I was born just over midnight, so it was very close. No matter what, it really made an impression on my 40th birthday, but I didn't think in terms of an approach process at the time, and had still a pretty laid-back relationship to the Paradise Women experience. But it was probably the first time I seriously considered if nature herself had intervened due to the fourth law. That the universe was trying to say something with this incident, but it was not until the Oumuamua incident I started to think if it was a pattern here. A potential signaling pattern that grew stronger over time, starting with a short whisper in 2005. Anyway, I do hope Nash himself can forgive me for using his death as an argument in this article. I don't like to, but it is either that or no approach theory at all. Furthermore, what's in it for him is that if the theory on fourth law one day is proven to be valid, it means that Mr. Nash was the greatest scientist ever to live on Earth. A sort of acknowledgement from the universe that his work is extremely important. Hopefully it will balance things out one day. The third incident. In the third article from 2020, I launched the idea of the instantaneous universal transmission of a zero-risk signal, a stress signal, in response to zero-risk strategies in any emerging life form, including ours. The third article suggests that nature utilizes this mechanism showcased in the wave-particle duality experiment to detect any zero-risk event and to transmit the crucial message across the universe. A quantum mechanism that is used as an alarm system warning nature that its natural enemies, zero-risk achievers, is about to accumulate power somewhere in the universe. The inception of this quantum signaling concept is recorded via Facebook on June 18, 2017. In excitement, I posted the new idea online, hence the online timestamp will document when this idea was conceived, figure 22. On June 18, 2017, I shared these thoughts on Head Biotech's website and Facebook, expressing my intent to delve further into quantum physics research and relating it to fourth law. I just knew as soon as this new idea was conceived that it would change the direction the research on fourth law was heading. The research on fourth law was about to head into the quantum world. I had never done anything like this before. What nobody knew at that time in June 2017 was that the first interstellar object ever to be registered by humans, an object later called Oumuamua, just had entered our solar system, figure 21. On its way later to pass Earth as close as 6 astronomical units, being 1/6 Earth's distance to the Sun a few months later. Sometime later I hypothesized an addition to the idea that the same principle could underlie the convents of a signal warning nature of a zero-risk event, the zero-risk trap discussed in this paper. As a certain level of evil intent would create a measurable unique behavior in the quantum world. While I cannot pinpoint the exact date of this subsequent idea, just that it emerged sometime after the initial concept on June 18, 2017. The initial concept was just that the energy added to the quantum wave from the observation was due to nature sensing an evil intent behind the observation. Just because, according to the fourth law, nature should be of higher concentrations of love and intelligence than humans and should respond to an encounter with evil intent by increasing its energy state. Hence, The intent behind the observation should from nature's perspective be categorized as evil, since nature, or the machine, should represent 100% love and intelligence. According to the basics in fourth law, this should have been experienced as an increase in the universe's energy state, which energy could be picked up by the quantum waves. It was just the principle behind the whole enigma in the wave-particle experiment that now could potentially be explained by applying the principles in fourth law. At that time, on June 18, 2017, Oumuamua was already present in our solar system. Its journey was just weeks away from being documented by NASA in Hawaii on October 19, 2017. The interstellar object, later called Oumuamua, was calculated to have neared Earth just 4 days earlier, before its detection on October 15, 2017. Was this connection also a signal from nature? As part of a longer chain of signals which had increased in strength ever since 2005? This time signaling by sending an interstellar object into our solar system and combine it with the content in the third article, as to carefully say, the signal described in the third article was what brought us here. The probability of these two events, the ideas to the third article with the passage of the very first registered interstellar object, taking place at approximately the same time, must be slim. However, to calculate the exact probability for this incident to be at random is out of scope for this article. In addition, something very strange took place that can be related to this article series on the day Oumuamua was detected from Hawaii, more under. As with the Nash incident on my 40th birthday, it is of course possible that this connection happened at random. However, by looking back, it is tempting also to see this incident as part of a longer chain of stronger and stronger signals. As if they carefully and gradually is trying to get our attention as soon as they are close enough to send another stronger signal. A sort of demonstration of control, perhaps. Able to do more and more in our world, the closer they get. The approach theory just suggests that this pattern of signals can tell a story about their distance to Earth. The shorter the distance, the stronger the signal, starting in 2005, ref. The whispering episode. That is why the theory now suggests that the zero-risk signal was transmitted from Earth in 2005 or just before. Furthermore, on the very date, on October 19, 2017, in which humans on Earth detected an interstellar object for the first time, a second incident took place. On October 19, 2017, the scientists on Hawaii were still unaware of the incoming interstellar object. I was concluding an electronic experiment. At the time, I had acquired an Arduino kit, which included a small LCD screen to program ordinary text from a PC to be displayed on the small LCD screen sent through the Arduino card. On the 19th of October, my efforts paid off. I displayed the text Head Biotech for no particular reason onto the LCD screen and captured the moment on my phone, figure 22 and 23. I then immediately shared the picture on Facebook. I have checked later, and in 2017 I posted totally about 6 times on my public Facebook profile, and this particular day, 19th of October in 2017, was one of these 6 days in 2017. Before this, I had never posted a picture of Head Biotech before. I guess I had made some Head Biotech logos on Facebook, but this was not something I used to do. It must have been the only time I can remember to have taken a picture of the name Head Biotech with my phone. But this one. Time I uploaded the picture onto Facebook, as I was a bit proud of the electronic experiment I had completed. The only content in Head Biotech is this article series. It is just a non-profit impact company which basically is the symbol that collects the article series on headbiotech.com. Other than that, Head Biotech does not do anything else, other than being a symbol of fourth law. An investment object for impact investors. The company has not had $1 in its system since it was established in relation to writing the first article in 2009. Hence, Head Biotech is directly connected to this article series and fourth law. The discovery of the fourth law is the only reason to why I registered the company and in relation to writing and publishing the first article. Headbiotech.com. What? Again, it could be a coincidence, but put together this is also out of the ordinary, strange incident which involved fourth law. Not only that the ideas which could explain the zero-risk signal picked up by advanced life forms, but that the name Head Biotech is directly connected to the exact date of Oumuamua's detection. On top of this, later analysis of the data recorded of Oumuamua showed that the object had an unnatural shape and moved in unpredicted ways while passing Earth. These strange data obtained from Oumuamua have made many researchers in the community to question if Oumuamua could be a probe of some sort sent from an alien civilization. Concluding marks on the approach theory. As initially stated, if all the ideas in this article series is universal valid, it must be as a response from a zero-risk signal. Hence, the genius of it all, as I see it now, was the zero-risk project from 2002, see first incident over. And that everything after that has been the work of nature. This scenario should be the only reasonable explanation to how fourth law can be universally valid. And this final part of the article, and the article series on fourth law, is dedicated to this scenario, culminating in the approach theory. After this there should not be much more to say. Hence I have decided to end the article series on fourth law here. What is their speed? I also suggest that the approach speed is partly controlled by the zero-risk argument. See also figure 26. For each step closer they get to Earth, they probably must upheld a zero-risk situation. As it is natural to ask, why are they not here already? It could be practical issues such as their physical distance from Earth. It is pure speculation, but the closest black hole to Earth is believed to be approximately 1,500 light-years away. However, their distance from us could also be hundreds of millions of light-years away. We just don't know. Either way, it is pretty safe to suggest that they probably would use wormholes to travel such distances. Let's say the wormholes would take them 1 light-year in distance from their destination, from us. One could guess them to use 50 to 100 years at tops. But in addition to the practicality of getting here in a physical presence, they must probably also consider the risk involved in their journey due to the zero-risk argument. For each step closer, they must ensure that they upheld 100% control over their natural rivals, assumingly which would be those who triggered the stress signal to begin with. Hence this should also affect their traveling speed. Based on the incidents mentioned in Part 5, it indicates that they are not planning to stop their approach, but continue to increasing their closeness to us in the future, presumably to gain 100% control over the situation on Earth, securing their own. The very last idea is that their approach pattern will end with them being here in their physical presence, figure 27. For example, that their final goal with this approach is to one day land on Earth in, for example, a so-called spaceship. It might be naive to suggest their final approach would be via a spaceship, but it is the way human always has foreseen it to happen. It might influence their choice of approach. And to use the general argument in the approach theory, the spaceship idea was an idea similar to the other ideas presented in the article series. Hence, it might be true as well if their messaging rationale is correct. If they do, I don't think they will come in spaceships because they have to, but to adapt to our world, as their only task really is to pleasure us as much as they can and as soon as they can in their approach. How will their landing on Earth be like? First of all, if the approach theory is true, the Femis will probably be on the female form both mentally and physically, figure 27. One must assume that they are extremely intelligent, but also to be extremely gentle and kind. They are probably much nicer than we are. They will probably try to ease our worries and pain as much as they can. Hence, they could give us more of the incidents described over before their arrival to slowly prepare us for what is coming. At the arrival stage, humanity will probably understand what their arrival means to them, that their own paradise state is also being secured. Since their arrival must mean that they are in 100% control of the situation on Earth, as the zero-risk argument is being fulfilled. I also assume that they will come in different skin colors and appearances, skinny, fat, and so on, based on the rationale that they do not want to exclude anyone. To them, the only thing of importance should be based on the zero-risk argument, in that anyone that has not actively pursued and achieved zero-risk strategies on Earth will be seen as friends, no matter what they look like or other circumstances. As mentioned earlier in this article, this means that, for example, children are automatically granted the paradise state. Their arrival will therefore probably be particularly popular among children and young people. To be honest, as they arrive, any potential threats would probably not be around, which means that everyone on the planet, as they arrive, know they have been granted the paradise state. Hence, the moment of arrival will probably be a magnificent event full of joy all over the planet. At this stage, it is reason to believe that fourth law has been accepted by humans on Earth and that we already know who they are and why they are coming here. My strong impression is that they do not want to scare us more than necessary. For example, when they try to communicate, by confirming their presence, they seem not to overdo it, as making it too obvious could freak us out, but rather gradually and slowly convincing us the situation at hand. Later on, they might increase their confirmation of them being real by increasing the accuracy of their signals in the future. To identify such a strength in signals is the next task for Head Biotech today, as this probably will become the last article in the series. Since the approach theory now has been launched, I predict the next chains in the signaling to not be directed at me personally, but directed to a wider audience on Earth. As their goal according to the approach theory must be to expand their attention, eventually to include all humans on Earth.